Deck the halls with malted barley.
La 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 la. Welcome to Dram Talk, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm Brad.
And I'm Daniel.
And I mean, we're getting pretty close to Christmas, right?
Yeah, we're December here, coming to the end of this god-awful year.
It's not been that bad. We got this podcast up and running.
Exactly. I mean, my whiskey collection has expanded exponentially this year.
Yeah, as has mine. You know, I've had to relocate cupboards in the kitchen.
I used to have some bookshelves. Now I've just got a whiskey shelf.
My kitchen's slowly turning into a bar. Let's just say that. I mean, no complaints here. Not from me anyway.
Oh, not here. Yeah. Hope 2021 brings as much whiskey as this year did.
But yeah, you know, December, here we are. And I mean, I don't think we've done a lot of wish lists on this episode.
Yeah, we
Maybe
have.
like 3, 4, 5. I don't know. There's been quite a few.
Dropping a lot of hints to people. Like, apparently, I guess this shows our family members don't listen to this podcast.
But at the same time, anyway, I don't think we've not necessarily gone and purchased anything from this wish list either.
No. So, okay, like in saying that, I have received a gift from you for my birthday, which is Talisker Storm. That was on my list. Because I'm pretty sure on our episode where we did like a more expensive whiskey wish list, I added the Abuna to my list.
Oh, okay,
And that's on my shelf now as well.
Yeah. Which I did purchase for you as well, but not necessarily because you gave me the money back for that.
Yeah.
But hey, whatever. I still bought it and I gave it to you. But we sat here and we're thinking, all right, we need content for December. What are we going to talk about? You know, all right, well, let's give the audience a gift guide this time. Instead of just spouting out what we want, let's give them some stuff, you know, some ideas for things they should go out and buy.
Yeah, so I guess this came about like both with contemplating if you're buying whiskey for someone for Christmas, what should you choose? And okay, this can work both ways. It can either work for you if you're already like into whiskey, you know what you like, and you maybe want to come up with get some new ideas as to what gifts to give people, or maybe you want to pass this on to someone you know to give them a little hint as to how to shop for a whiskey drinker.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you know, do you have a whiskey lover in your life? Or maybe you want to get into whiskey and you don't know where to start. Or better yet, you're hoping to play guide and set someone down this path, right?
Yeah, so we would highly recommend sharing this podcast with your friends and family just so they know what to buy you.
Yeah. And look, we've done the hard part for you, right? We're going to take you guys region by region and offer up a stereotype that typically represents that region. And, you know, just to get into that Christmas spirit, you know, we know people love giving those surprise gifts. Well, we're going to give you some options that are a little unconventional as well.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we're purely sticking to Scotland. Like, we're not covering the entire world of whiskey, so we're going to leave out bourbon, Japanese whiskey. Like, just stick to pure Scotch from Scotland.
Yeah.
Whiskey from Scotland. So that's where we're going to focus. We're going to look at each of the different regions. And yeah, it's just that. It's providing you with like a guide to prepare yourself for when you go into a bottle shop to purchase a bottle of whiskey. At least you know what to look out for. Like things that'll ring bells when you see names that we've mentioned. Or even if it comes down to just terms about the bottling, like whether it's aged in different casks, age statements versus non-age statements. Like we won't go into too much detail about that here, but I guess just a guide to buying whiskey for Christmas.
Right. So now before we actually start into our first region here, which is Speyside, and you know, Daniel, as always, it's Dram Talk. We pour a dram before we get into the talk. So what do we got in the glass today?
We got Glenallachie 15.
And back to the Glenallachie.
I'm so happy to be drinking this. It's mixed. I'm like conflicted as well because my bottle's getting empty. And as far as I can tell, Glenallachie 15 is still not available in Australia.
Yeah,
like
still yet to find it.
Yeah. So, I mean, hurry up, guys. Send more out here because I'm running low.
Yeah. So I've already started off by dropping a teaspoon of water in straight away because that's how I know I enjoy this dram, with that addition of water.
Yeah, I really do. The water just improves the experience of this one so much more.
All right. So as I mentioned just before, we're going to get into Speyside. So your stereotypical Speyside, right? First off, I think we'd say Glenfiddich 12. Now,
I mean, like, that's no surprise though, is it?
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, how can you bring up Speyside and do a gift guide without mentioning the folks over at Glenfiddich? I mean, you just can't do it. It's a great entry-level dram, but at the same time, I don't think you'd listen to us and need our recommendation to go out and buy that one.
This isn't exactly a hot take.
Yeah.
You're not discovering some hidden gem here. You're basically getting slapped in the face with it when you walk into the bottle shop.
Yeah, so like we're not being rude or disapproving of Glenfiddich at all, but just maybe, save this one for another time, or, if you're getting down to, the 20th of December, you still haven't picked out a bottle for someone, you're running out of time, running out of options, then come back to it, because as Daniel mentioned, there's going to be no shortage of this one on the shelves at all.
Yeah, and again, it's the kind of thing, like, if you're an avid whiskey drinker and you get gifted that, like, you're going to be able to drink it, but you also know that, like, it does carry maybe a little bit of a connotation, like maybe they haven't put a lot of thought and research into buying a gift, and like, let's just get this one because they seem so popular and they're a reasonable price point. And like, some people may love Glenfiddich and be really happy to get it, or some people may buy it because they do enjoy it. But again, it's one of those things where, because it is so popular, it's just like, we've mentioned it because we felt we have to, but it's not going to be our recommendation because it's just so obvious.
When you're thinking of Glenfiddich as well, you're not going to be disappointed when you get it. I mean, look, free scotch is good scotch, right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
So you're not going to be disappointed. But as Daniel mentioned, you're probably going to think, well, that person just walked into the bottle-o, grabbed the first thing that was in the scotch section and the bottle that had the most on the shelf. So, But again, like we said before, we're not dissing Glenfiddich. We like Glenfiddich. So it's just, for this option here, maybe just, like I said, if you're running out of options, then go to it. So, but the one that we do recommend, though, the Arbelao 12. Now, I mean, this is something I wholeheartedly get behind, right? It's a great inviting dram. The nose is super pleasant. It's got some great sweetness and super appropriate for the holiday season because you get some nice little notes of fruitcake there as well. So a really time appropriate dram, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say especially around Christmas time, like if you're going in Arbelao, like they just do sherry cask aging so well, and that sherry is just like, it's like the perfect dram or perfect flavors to impart in a dram for the Christmas season, because you are getting those spiced notes, the fruitcake, the like almost oaky savory goodness as well. So it's like, it's a combination of a variety of flavors that just work really well with the season, and we love sherry here.
So, I mean, as you can tell, we are having a dram of the Glenalky 15 here, which is a sherry-aged scotch. So, I mean, hey, we love our sherry, and we're on that kick at the moment. We've mentioned it in past episodes. We're really on that sherry kick at the moment. Going back to that Arbelao 12, it's a great all-round dram, and one that can really open the door for someone into the great world of single malt scotch. It's a real palatable ABV at 40%. And with all that sweetness and the real common notes in Speyside, I don't think you can have much trouble or much drama giving this to someone as a present.
Yeah, it's an easy drinking one that has a lot of flavor, so I think you're pretty safe with this one. And then let's go into our unconventional drams for this region. So maybe you don't want to buy someone just like the classic, typical Speyside drams. Maybe you want to get something a little bit different, a little bit unique. And now I've got two recommendations here. We'll start with probably the more affordable and more accessible one, which would be Glenfiddich Fire and Kane. Now, I had this one recently, and I'm just saying, like, this is a really great option for someone who likes peat, or maybe someone who has never even really tried peat and are just like focused solely on the Speyside region, because it does carry really strongly a lot of the Speyside notes of like rich toffee, fresh and baked fruits. And then it's got peat there that is really like undeniably present, but not overpowering. Like, it's not going to blow out their palate. It's not going to be the only thing they can taste, but they're definitely going to be able to taste it. So it's one of the things, like, they'll try it, and I think that is what's going to coax them down that path that'll take them to the magical land that is peated whiskies.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good choice. And not only that, Glenfiddich Fire and Kane, super affordable.
Oh yeah, it sits at I want to say almost even about the same price as like the Glenfiddich 12, like around that $70 mark here in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're about to knock us for hating Glenfiddich, well, there you go. There's a second bottle. There it is. There it is. So leave us alone. Now,
back off, all right?
Yeah. Going on to the next bottle we're going to recommend here. It's part of Diageo's special release for 2019, and that's the Kragenmore 12-year.
Yes, this is a little bit of a premium gift. So you're gonna be dropping a little bit of money on this one. Maybe it's a gift for yourself. Who knows? Highly recommend it though. Like if you love whiskey, I mean, like any cask strength dram, you're in for a treat with. And I think this one's particularly special because it is somewhat peated. Now, something I learned from watching the brand ambassador for Diageo give a talk about this was that the reason why this is peated and why it's part of their limited release is because at that time, Talisker had a drought and couldn't produce as much of their whiskey as they didn't have enough water to produce as much whiskey as they had grain for. So they sent some of their grain over to Kragenmore. And this was grain that had already been malted. So it had already been imbued in the drying process with a lot of the flavors that Talisker is characterized by. And so when Kragenmore mashed, distilled, and aged it, what they ended up with was a kind of like experimental Talisker-esque Kragenmore, which works really well.
Oh, it really does. I mean, we haven't reviewed this one on the pod yet, but man, it's a special little dram. And, it's got those delightful Speyside notes in the back. But then at the front, though, it's our old friend Pete.
Yep.
And we'd love to see him, right?
Welcome guest anytime.
And even for me, it's just one that's constantly been on my mind since I've had a dram of it. And that just means, it's got that staying power and it's worthy, I think, of being part of any true whiskey lovers collection.
Yeah, and while it is part of their special release, then it is somewhat of it's a little bit of a jump up on that standard, $70 to $100 price point. I think this sits at about $140.
Yeah, 140 around there, yeah.
So a little bit more, but if you're an Australian and you're a member of the Whiskey Club, that's roughly what you'd be spending a month on a whiskey. So for a gift, I don't think it's too unreasonable if you really like the person you're buying it for.
Yeah, and even for us here in the land of Oz, it is one of the cheaper, if not the cheapest, of the 2019 release, I'm pretty sure.
I think that one and the Cardew 14, they sit around the same price point.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're looking for a really great smoky expression of Speyside, you can't go wrong with this bottle here, ladies and gentlemen. This is the one.
It's the one. Go out and get it now.
It's the one.
Before it's gone, hurry. Okay, so let's move on to our favorite region.
Yeah.
Off to Islay we go. We're moving on to this one second, I think, because one, it's such a big part of our whiskey experience, and it has, I don't want to say a cult following, but the people who love Pete.
Yeah.
And they make up a large portion of the whiskey community. So second to Speyside with the most distilleries and the most sales, I think Islay is one of the most popular regions. And so looking at our stereotypical dram, the one you'd usually classically buy for someone or ask to be bought for you as a gift, I mean, you can't go past Lagavulin 16.
Yeah, you really can't. But I mean, look, this was a really tough one to do a gift guide for.
Yeah,
this region specifically. Because, I mean, Daniel and I could have a whole page for this one. Not even a whole page. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages full.
Screw it. Let's forget the rest of the regions. Yeah. We're just going to recommend Islay whiskies from now on.
But look, we couldn't do that to your wallets. I mean, we really couldn't, right? Not at this time of year. You got to buy presents for everyone, not just for yourself, or not just for the whiskey lover in your life,
Oh, maybe we should. Maybe we should just keep recommending them, though.
But yeah, look, Lagavulin 16, this is a classic. And it's just no doubt in my mind that it's going to be a memorable gift. That's typical of Islay. And if it's their first Islay, well, it's definitely going to be a memorable time, as all first should be, right?
Mm. Oh, yeah.
And if you're wondering what they're going to expect from Lagavulin 16, well, if I can put it for you in just a sentence, right? It's a campfire in your mouth, or better yet, you'll just feel like you're stood in front of a bonfire.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best way I can put Lagavulin 16.
Yeah, it really is. We We love it so much. We've classified it as home because while it is in front of a campfire, it's that in a really pleasant and comforting way. It's just so, I want to say, unbelievably enjoyable. Like, I love every dram I've had of it. And just every time I come back to it, I'm like, yeah, this is the stuff.
Even like, I guess some of the versions that I had to putting this onto the gift guide was that if you're gifting this to someone that is a whiskey drinker and they love their scotch, just maybe have a look just in case. They might already have this in their collection. But at the end of the day, even if it's me, I've already got a bottle of this. If I get a second one, I'm not going to complain.
Oh yeah, I would love multiple bottles of this on my shelf.
If we're looking at the next bottle that we recommend here, we're going stereotypical Islay whiskeys. So you guys are probably thinking, right? You're expecting Lefroy,
Maybe even an
Ardbeg.
Ardbeg.
Yeah, maybe even Ardbeg. You're expecting these guys to show up next, but not quite, ladies and gentlemen. We're recommending Kalila 12 instead.
Why? I hear them ask, Brad. Do you want to explain?
Well, dram talk, we love a full-bodied dram, and Kalila definitely delivers on that front. It's got a great oily mouth feel with strong wisps of smoke. You're almost expecting to see that smoke coming out your nostrils. But a big reason, I think, that we can definitely recommend this one is that if you've got a whiskey lover in your life or someone that's just begun their journey into Scotch, typically you'd find that they've probably started with a blend.
Yeah, they would have dipped their toes in, and I'm guessing the most popular one they would have probably gone in at would be Johnny Walker.
Yep.
So if you're looking at Johnny Walker Black, like this is one of the dominant blends in that.
Yeah, and if they've had double black, this is even more prominent in that. So you're going to give them a great single malt whiskey that's going to carry a lot of familiarity for them.
Yeah, and I know it's not the point of this episode, but maybe you want to get someone into whiskey, and if you try them out on a double black, like it's just the perfect stepping stone to get them, to ease them into peat, because they try double black, then when they go to the Kalila 12, it's like, this is like, it's strong. Like peat makes a really big impression the first time anyone tries it, but it's at least you'll have that familiarity, that sense of like, oh yeah, like I enjoy this, and it kind of reminds me of that.
What Daniel and I were really hoping with the recommendation of Kalila 12 here was that not only would it hopefully push them into the wider world of peated single malt, but it'll push them into the wider world of Scotch and single malt in general, which is what we're really trying to do. And it's really, I guess, the modus operandi of this podcast, right?
Yeah.
We just want to get as many people into Scotch and single malt as possible.
That's basically it, because, whiskey is great, and it's there for everyone to enjoy, however you want to enjoy it.
So moving on to the unconventional Islay whiskies. Daniel, what do we got first?
Well, now this one, I guess, okay, what you'll find over our next couple recommendations is they're all part of the same parent company. And no, we're not talking about Diageo here. We're talking about Distell Group. So one of the distilleries they operate is Bunnahabhain. And so what we're going to be recommending for an unconventional Islay would be Bunnahabhain 12.
But why is that?
Why is that? Yeah.
Why is it different?
Why is it different? Well, Bunnahabhain 12, it's a staple of Islay, but for a different reason. I mean, like this one is an unpeated Islay whiskey, which is, quite unusual for Islay. But I feel like it does carry a lot of complexity and notes that people will really enjoy, even if you are like a peat head like us. And what notes are they? They're sherry. Like,
Yeah.
As we mentioned earlier, we're on a huge sherry kick at the moment, and this one's aged in sherry, so you've got a lot of those sherry notes, a subtle sweetness, and a real soft coastal feel that will leave even the most die-hard whiskey fans wanting more. And as I mentioned, this is part of the Distell Group, and what I think they're doing really well with their whiskies is they've got kind of like a really nice, consistent quality control across all of their distilleries. So if you look at Bunnahabhain, if you look at Deanston, if you look at Tobermory, you'll see all of them are bottled at 46.3%. And now this, as we mentioned in our Tobermory episode, is because bottles under 46% are susceptible to clouding when they get cold. So once they're over 46%, that risk of them going cloudy drops substantially. So they don't need to chill filter, which means And they're all natural color. Like all of their bottles from all their distilleries are natural color. So you're looking at integrity bottling across the board here.
Yes, that's a big thumbs up from us.
Which is great. And like that really shows in the quality of their drams from all of these distilleries. And so I think this one's definitely worth a try. So, you know, if you know someone who really enjoys peated whiskey, like getting them this one, I think maybe it'd be a good little shake up from what they're commonly used to.
That's part of the point of us offering you an unconventional dram as well, because we're hopefully looking to push some people into areas they wouldn't necessarily go.
Yeah.
You know, just go down the road less traveled, folks. It's worth it.
It really is, because you never know what you're going to discover. Like there are just so many great things out there, and a lot of them that I and we have discovered almost purely by accident.
Yeah. I mean, the next one we're going to offer up here is Kilchoman Umbrak. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Am I pronouncing that right?
I'm
Who knows?
I'm sure it's wrong. It usually always is with us, but hey, I mean, like this is Gaelic for the mess. That might seem strange. Like, why are they calling one of their bottles a mess?
Yeah.
But there's a story behind this name that I think makes it quite appropriate and makes me actually like this one even more. So while vatting casks, an unnamed stillman accidentally mixed their core expression, which is Makirbe, with a port matured Kilchoman. So he messed up.
Yeah.
He dumb messed up. And so when the founder of Kilchoman, Anthony Wills, discovered this mistaken concoction the guy put together, he described it as Umbrak, the mess. But, you know, that name stuck and it kept on the bottle to what's now distributed to us to purchase.
Was it really a mess? I don't think so.
Yeah, the best discoveries are usually mistakes.
So what are you expecting with this dram? Well, the peat in this one, it's done really, really well. It's got a great balance. So you're going to see the notes of peat, smoke, soot, and tar really intertwine and go together so just beautifully, right?
Yeah.
And it's got a really nice sticky pudding note, I'd say, at the end. So very dense, rich, and juicy with classic Isla maritime notes. And if you're thinking about the finish here, just think of Kalila 12 if you've had it. Just even peatier.
Yeah, and for those keen listeners out there, you might have noticed what we were describing. That sounds like a sherry cask. I mean, like it is port, but those fortified wine casks do kind of impart a lot of the same notes here that, yeah, we thoroughly enjoy.
Alrighty. Region number 3. Now, before we get into region number 3, let's have another dram. So, Daniel, what did we just pour into the glass?
We just poured in the Kragenmore 12 from the Diageo 2019 Rare by Nature release. We couldn't resist. Like, we were going to save it for an episode to review, but after talking about it, it was just like, nah, we got to have this. We got to have this. And honestly, I think it seems like, so I bought it a little over a month ago, and it seems to have gotten more peated. Like the peat is a lot more present in this now than I remember it being when I first tried it.
Yeah, you can definitely tell on the nose. There's a lot of peat. But,
yeah,
you know, moving on to our third region of the day.
We're off to the Highlands. So, I mean, like, in discussing what we choose for this episode, we're like, okay, Highlands, what's our stereotype? And I'm like, what have we got? We've got, and I hear Brad in the background, Oban. I'm like, we got Glenmorangie, Oban. We got Glendronach, Oban. We got Dalmore, Oban. So I'm like, you know, Oban's going to make an appearance in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be an episode of Dram Talk without Oban.
It would not. But we'll be starting off with the Glenmorangie 10. So I think this is almost quintessential Highlands. Like, it is probably the most popular Highland distillery. I say that without any evidence to back me up.
Yeah, and I mean, look, even when you're thinking of the Highlands, it can be a little hard to choose something that is stereotypical of it, considering how vast the region is in terms of size, right? And just depending on where distilleries are located, they're going to carry different notes.
Yeah, because you can find distilleries like Tomatin, which is really close to the Speyside region, and it has a lot of those similar fruity notes to the Speyside. And then you got Oban on the other side, which is a lot more coastal.
Yeah, exactly. So going back to the Glenmorangie 10 specifically here, if you're on a budget, maybe this is probably a great gift to get. It's very, very affordable.
I think it's really easy for people to get into as well. Like, I don't think you're going to find many people that won't be happy to receive this. I mean, like, its palate's super pleasing, really nice creamy notes, common profile of like vanilla and toffee with some fruity notes being present on the nose. It's just a really welcoming malt. And it's a go-to for a lot of whiskey drinkers as well. And I think they do a great variety too. So even if you're looking beyond just the 10, you've got other options like the Signet, which a little bit more expensive.
Perfect segue there. The Signet's our second recommendation. Now, if you're looking to purchase a gift for someone that you know is a little bit fancy, they drink their scotch with a pinky out.
Yeah.
So or maybe you're just looking for a gift for that special someone. I'd say go for the Signet. It's definitely a statement piece in any collection.
Yeah, like it not only it looks like a statement piece, it's a really kind of metallic-y opal-esque black bottle, and it's a statement piece in the glass as well. Like, that thing is really complex. Like, it's really strong, really chocolatey, and also really creamy, like those common Glenmorangie notes we mentioned earlier, all present in there.
Yeah, and definitely the first thing you're going to notice if you get gifted the Signet or if you give it to someone as a present, well, you're going to notice the packaging. Great presentation, and one that any real whiskey lover is going to love on the shelf.
Yeah, it's definitely a display bottle. It's one you'd put out to show.
Yeah, and if we're just looking at the dram itself, there's no age statement, but there are rumors, faint whispers that they've got some elements of pretty old spirit in this one, with just ages ranging from 35 to 40 years old.
Goddamn.
So you're gifting something pretty special to someone with this one. But if we're looking at the actual, what you'd expect from it, a sweet malt, as Daniel mentioned, the things you'd expect to find in Glenmorangie, but they're followed by some cinnamon notes as well, which finally play out and reveal some undertones of chocolate, orange, and even faint hints of espresso. Now, I remember trying this one and really enjoying it, and it's something I could definitely recommend as a special gift.
Yeah, it really is, and I think it just, for all we've said already, it's like it's really impressionable on the palate, and it's really impressionable on the shelf.
Yeah, and of course, dram number 3 that we're going to recommend for the Highlands.
I still oppose this.
Well, you know what it is. I don't think I have to name it, but I will anyway because I love saying it. Oban 14. Now, I just don't think you can go wrong with this one here. It's a great coastal dram that still presents characteristics of the Highlands with some subtle smoke as well. And just honestly, what is there to hate about this dram? Just go out and buy it. It's a great price, a good experience all around, and one of that I just can't see someone that really likes Scotch being disappointed with it.
Very good. Okay, so now let's go on to our unconventional drams for the Highlands.
Right, what do we got first up?
So we're going to look at the Kubakan. Now, for avid listeners of the pod, you may be saying, like, you're recommending Kubakan after what you said about them in your episode? Okay, like, if you haven't listened to that episode, it wasn't bad. We didn't trash on Kubakan. It just wasn't our favorite. Like, we were looking... Okay, like, it was one of our first experimentally peated whiskies from a non-Islay distillery. And they did say it's subtly peated, and they really mean that. Like,
yep.
They took a lot of liberty with the word subtle, I think. Like, we had to really search for that peat. Like, it wasn't jumping out of the glass like the Kragenmore peat or like the Glenfiddich Fire and Kane peat. Like, it was a note, not a dominant characteristic. And I think why we're recommending it here is because the dram itself, it's an annual release and they have different variations of it. So some of them have been aged in different casks. So they obviously give different flavors, different profiles. And I think there's going to be something out there that we will really enjoy about it. Because the one we tried was their standard core release?
Yeah, so I think the one that we tried was their The signature,
Yeah.
right? So that's just been aged in bourbon and sherry casks. And there are a couple that are out there that are a bit harder to find for us here in Oz anyway.
I know you might be saying like, oh, it's aged in sherry casks. I thought you guys loved sherry. And it's like, well, I think the bourbon aging is a little bit more prominent, even if you look at it.
Yeah, it definitely is. When you look at it.
It's a lot lighter. So bourbon has definitely had more of an influence than sherry.
And definitely if you're still got a little bit of hesitation on your mind, just consider as well that I'll say that I really think Daniel and I, our ratings of this one was really influenced by us hoping for a bit more peat than what was presented.
Yeah, I think it was more of a reflection of our disappointment at the lack of a more prominent peaty note than a commentary on the whiskey itself, because I think it does actually have quite a bit to offer if you're more inclined towards those kind of flavor notes. Like I know when I first opened the bottle, it was just like straight up orange. Like orange was really, really prominent. And I love orange. So I'm like surprised I didn't enjoy it. But I think it was more because I was looking for that peat.
Yeah, so overall, it's still got some great notes. So if you can't find any other bottling of Kubakan, I'd still get behind the signature. I could still recommend it for you. But if you can find another bottling of Kubakan, maybe go for that one instead.
Moving on to our second dram, it's going to be the Glendronach Peter. Now, I tried this not too long ago, and I mean, it's a really similar to the Glenfiddich Fire and Kane. I think this is a little bit higher quality than that, but it's just a really good option for people who may not be already into peat, or who may be really enjoying peat and you're just looking for something a little bit different than an Islay whiskey to provide to them. It's really nice, not overpowering. The peat is undeniably present, but you've got a lot more of like cinnamon and spices as well as fruits that come across in it a lot more. They come across in it stronger than they do in like an Islay dram. So you're combining, I guess, the characteristics of the Highlands with peat as opposed to like the maritime notes you'd commonly find in an Islay whiskey.
If you are a listener of the pod, you're going to know this is one that hits a little too close to home for Daniel and myself. We missed out on it. And if you manage to find this one in the shops, do reach out, get into contact. Please let us know where you found it.
We'll be there within half an hour. We don't care how far away you are.
Yeah.
Okay, now last option for here. I've chucked this one in kind of at the 11th hour because I just want it, it's more of a notable mention than an actual recommendation, because I think this is worth it. I did mention it earlier. It's Deanston 12. Like, it's part of Distill Group, the same group that did Bunnahabhain as well as Tobermory and Lechaic. So if you haven't heard of these before, or if you've seen them on the shelf, haven't noticed it, I'd highly recommend paying attention to them, because for all the reasons I mentioned earlier, like I love the bottles brought out by this distillery corporation. I think they're doing a really good job of what they're producing, and I think this one's a really good note. It is kind of characteristically Highland whiskey, so you're getting smooth and creamy sweetness, hints of fruit, honey, spices, and vanilla, as well as like kind of, and the spices come across at the end with like a tinge of clove.
You're probably thinking, why is this in the unconventional? Well, it's in the unconventional because you probably haven't paid too much attention to this one. So, keep your eyes peeled. If you see it, it's worth the look.
And we're off to the Lowlands. So, Brad, what have we got for the Lowlands?
Right. So, first off, I don't think you can think of the Lowlands without mentioning the Glenkinchie 12. Now, if you're thinking of this malt, it's not only Glenkinchie's flagship, but it's one that really represents the Lowlands itself. On the palate, presenting some really nice fruit notes as well with honey. So this one here could be a great gift for the whiskey lover in your life, because just from my experience anyway, the Lowlands don't seem to get too much love and attention. And this one here, it could be a great way to blow someone's mind and open the door to an often forgotten region of Scotch whiskey.
And I think to perfectly encapsulate that, like I've got a bottle on my shelf from basically every region but the Lowlands. So I do apologize to the Lowlands.
Now, for the unconventional dram, I've got us down here with the Glendronach Samsara. Now, the Samsara was one of 3 new releases from Glendronach in 2017 to celebrate their reopening. And, just a fun fact, it's quite appropriate name. Samsara means rebirth.
Ah.
So now, as to why this dram here qualified for the unconventional category, well, it's been aged in first fill Californian red wine and bourbon casks. So on top of all those classic lowland flavors, you're getting a real beautiful sweetness from the red wine at the beginning. Now, we had dram talk here. We know how special a dram finished off with wine can be. So we are strongly backing this one here.
I mean, black. That's all we have to say, really.
Yeah. I mean, now, just before we get into the islands, just looking at this Kragenmore here. Really, really good.
It is so good. Like, the peat, I think the peat's gotten stronger with its time in the bottle. I think as it's oxidized, I think the peat's really come across a lot more, but still, like, it is just an undeniably fragrant dram. Like, both on the nose and in the mouth, it just... I don't know, that's the way I can describe it. It's fragrant. Like, it feels like the outdoors.
Yeah. Super, super pleasant. And one that I can see why it made it onto the gift guide here. It's really, really good.
Yeah. Really enjoy this one. Like, so much.
Yeah. So, as Daniel said, onto the islands. So, stereotypes of the islands. What are we offering?
So, I mean, like, okay, no surprise from the trajectory of this episode, but Tobermory 12 is going to be one of our recommendations. For basically everything we've said so far, the fact that we love what this distillery group is actually doing with the drams they produce from their distilleries. And then what we're looking at for kind of the flavors that you'd expect from this one. So it's a little salty, a little sweet, and it's got some citrus notes. So there's this like a really nice, palatable, pleasant tone to this. Unlike, of course, our other recommendation for the islands, which would be the Talisker 10. This one's packs a little bit more of a punch. It's got a little bit of a kick.
So if you don't particularly like the person you're gifting this to, well, it's going to be like you punched him in the face without doing it yourself. But, look, we're kidding, of course. We love Talisker.
We do love Talisker. It's not always for everyone, but I think what it does offer is just an experience.
Yeah, that's definitely true. You definitely hit the nail on the head with that one. It's salty, it's peppery, it's peaty. You've got some of those orchard fruits there with the apple and the pear, and it's just really a classic and one you can't go wrong with.
Yes, I think the Talisker 10 it is a good entry point to the islands, but is Tobermory 12 a better entry point? That's something we can debate. Maybe let's not get into that today, though.
Yeah, no, not today.
There's not enough time.
So if we're thinking of unconventional drams for the islands, what are we looking at?
I won't cover it too much. What I will say to look out for, though, is maybe if you're already a fan of Talisker, go a different cask of this. Like maybe look at the Port Roux, like that's aged in port casks. I think that's going to offer a different version of Talisker that you may not be experienced with. And can't really specify this because maybe for our American listeners, because I know it's still not available here in Australia, but the Talisker 8, which is aged in Caribbean rum casks for the 2020 release, I think that seems like a real treat. I'm definitely going to purchase that as soon as it's available here. And then, like, again, side note as well, even a Leche. Like, Leche comes from the Tobermory distillery, peated whiskey. We love Leche. Like, it's a very good peated expression. It's a very good peated whiskey produced by Tobermory that I think really stands up to Isla.
Oh, it really does. And you could probably say that's down in part to a lot of their grain and malt coming from an Isla distillery, Bunnahabhain, right? But something else here, if we're still on that little peated track for the islands, one we can definitely recommend is Highland Park Volfather. So this one kind of comes at the end of the Viking Legend series and named after who else but Odin, right?
Yep. Oh, man. I love the Viking lore that's attached to Highland Park.
Yeah, and just with the Volfather, it's their most peated whiskey to date. So just really designed to mimic Odin's power, right?
Yeah, I think we really haven't done a good job at masking our love of peat, since basically every one of our unconventional drams has been a peated version from that region.
Yeah, and this one here bottled at 47% with no additional coloring. And being at 47%, you're probably expecting non-chill filtered, right? So, hey, a pretty good dram. Bottle looks great. Nice black bottle. Packaging looks great. I think with Highland Parkies, especially with their whole rebranding and everything that they've done, they've really nailed that Viking theme.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe for the script on the box might be a little bit too, a little bit too sappy for some folks. But hey, the Viking theme gets a lot of people.
It does, yeah. I think it's like really tied in with like the notion of whiskey and Vikings. It seems to work. All right, now moving on to our last region, Campbelltown. Now, for our stereotypical Campbelltown option, we're gonna recommend the Glen Scotia 15, which comes in at roughly about $100. So it's reasonably affordable. The other option, if you can't find this, I would recommend is their double cask, because I've also tried that one and I think it stands up. It's what made me want to go and visit the Glen Scotia distillery, which is where I ended up buying the 15. The 15 was released as part of like a redesign for their range, and the distillers use specially selected American oak casks to age this, which complements the like fruity and subtly coastal whiskey really well. It gives it a lot of those sea breezy, spicy notes to it. So you're looking at fruit, you're looking at sea breeze, you're looking at spice. It's just like a journey on the palate. And not to mention, the bottle's beautiful. Like, it just looks really nice.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with Glen Scotia. I really, really enjoyed it. But if we're looking for the unconventional dram from Campbelltown, what do we got?
So, going to say the Springbank 10. Now, I will preface this with an apology to Glengyle, since there are only 3 distilleries in Campbelltown. We've mentioned 2 and just aren't going to recommend the 3rd one. Now, this isn't like a diss at Glengyle. We haven't actually tried anything from there. And I also haven't really heard too much about this distillery. So I can't actually recommend anything from them because I just don't know. Like, there are some drams that I would recommend if I haven't tried. Deanston is an example, but it's because every other whiskey I know from that distillery group I love. I think they've done really well. And I've heard good things about this one. Glengyle, haven't really heard much about it. So I'm going to leave that one out. But I don't think you should neglect that distillery, especially if you enjoy some of the drams from there. But Springbank, we're putting in the unconventional category, not just because of the lack of options we have in Campbelltown, but because I think Springbank can be quite complex, especially for new amateur casual whiskey drinkers. The palate does offer a little bit of a challenge. They usually carry a lot of really strong like oak, spices, tinges of smoke, creamy palate, more smoke, but then a touch of sweet at the end as well. So that kind of combination of so many things hitting at once can be a little bit overwhelming, a little bit off-putting to some people. But for people who do enjoy whiskey, especially for people who do enjoy peat, I think this is a really good option.
As well, if you're just thinking, Glengyle, haven't really heard of that one before. Well, a lot of their bottles now will be branded under the name Kilkerran. And the main reason for that is the Glengyle name was already owned by the Loch Lomond distillers. So, yeah, Glengyle, Kilkerran, pretty interchangeable anyway. But hey, just if you're wondering, the hell, Glengyle, what the hell is Daniel going on about there? But Kilkerran.
I think Campbelltown is a really good option to gift someone who may be like already wading into the waters of the world of whiskey. Like if they're already like branching out from Speyside to the islands and Islay and the Highlands, like it's a region that's often overlooked because of how few distilleries that are actually there. But as we found with Springbank, with Glen Scotia 15, and I think we'll have to try Kilkerran, but they actually do some quality whiskey. Okay, I think that about wraps up our recommendations for bottles from the regions. You may have different impressions about which ones you'd rather be gifted and which ones you'd buy. That's entirely fine. We thought we'd try and give you, I guess, like a broad scope of what bottles we think both represent that region, but also offer a good entry point to that region if people aren't too familiar with whiskies from there, as well as options for different variations. Like say you've got someone who loves peat and you don't want to get them a whiskey from Islay, you want to get them something new, something different, something they may not have. Well, we've just shown you basically every region either carries notes of smoke and peat or can give a peated version of their whiskies. But I think before we sign off, let's just cover, I guess, some other like stocking filler items. Like maybe you don't want to buy an entire bottle, or maybe you've already bought a bottle and you want to chuck something a little bit extra on top to just make the gift complete as opposed to just handing them a bottle.
Yeah, look, first stocking filler, I think, goes without a doubt, a Glencairn glass.
I don't think you can ever have too many Glencairn glasses.
Yeah, no, you can never have too many, so get him a Glencairn glass.
I would not be disappointed if I got a Glencairn glass, and I've already got like 6 of them.
Yeah, super cheap, and probably the best way to experience Scotch, especially if you're looking to decipher the notes and the palate and the finish. You want the full experience.
And while we're on glasses, I mean, it's a little bit of a step up in the price range, but a Denver and Liley glass, I'm pretty sure that's an Australian company.
Yeah,
so
Melbourne-based.
Yeah, I don't know if they're available overseas, but these are definitely unique glasses, and I'm super keen to get one and try them out. So I think that'd make a really good gift option.
Yeah, and not only that, they look beautiful.
They do, yeah. They definitely have a really interesting shape to them.
I mean, if you're thinking about the next thing you could offer, you could get someone a set of rocks glasses. If you're giving them a set of rocks glasses, why not just throw in some Scotch rocks as well?
Yeah, I think Scotch rocks are a good option. It just shows... It's like that thing you'd want to buy someone who love whiskey, but you don't want to like take a guess at what they'd like, or maybe you're not looking at spending you're not looking at buying them an entire bottle of whiskey. It's just a good option to have, and especially here in Australia during those summers, like adding a Scotch rock into your glass can just make the dram a little bit more, like it can chill it down a little bit without diluting it.
Yeah, and not only that, especially if you're a bourbon lover, this is a whiskey podcast.
Yep.
Scotch rocks go pretty good with bourbon.
They do go really good with bourbon, yeah.
So a really good stocking filler, that one.
Couple of other options. I mean, like you're looking at, some places do offer sampling or tasting packs. So I'm pretty sure most of them are customizable, or at least you can choose how many you actually want to buy. But you can either look at buying a small amount of like 100ml bottles or a larger amount of 30ml bottles. And it's a good option to get someone, if you're not entirely sure what bottle they'd actually love, you get them a variety so they can try ones they haven't tried before. And it just gives them a variety and an option to select from. So I know a few locations, a few bottle shops do offer them. You're looking at more of the specialized wine and whiskey stores. You can also look at Whiskey Loot. I know they do a lot of those sample bottles as well. And there are some online purchases as well. Like I think distilleries sell their sample tastings from them.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say that if you're looking to give someone a bottle from a distillery, a sample pack is probably a great way to go as well, because you're going to get, more often than not, their core range, as well as some supplementary bottles from their range as well, that will offer some different flavor profiles and different notes as well.
And allow the person that receives it the freedom to then choose what bottle they do want to purchase.
Yeah, so it's a real great way to give someone a multitude of experiences without buying a multitude of full-size bottles.
Yeah. And then this last option, I guess is more for like, you want to buy someone in your workplace a gift and you're like, they like whiskey. You don't want to buy them a whole bottle of whiskey because let's face it, you just work with them.
Yeah.
But whiskey chocolates are always a good option. More specifically for Australians here, I know Target sell like a variety of whiskey chocolates, and I know they include Oban, Lagavulin, Talisker, Dalmore. I'm pretty sure there's another one. Dalwhinnie, I think, is the other one. I may be wrong. I'm pretty those are what I remember from last year when I got a box of those.
I'd imagine it would be those, because those are part of the Diageo core classics range sort of thing. So I'd imagine that it'd be those. Yeah, and just to go with those whiskey chocolates as well, You can also find a lot of, I guess, like fruit cakes and Christmas cakes that have whiskey in them as well. So there's a lot of food that can really accompany whiskey or have a whiskey flavor added to it. So there's a whole bunch of those out there. So they're a great stocking filler.
Yeah, there's like Glenfiddich mince pies, like the fruit pies as well. Like you're not short of gift ideas for people who love whiskey.
Yeah, and look, this probably isn't a stocking filler, right? But maybe an alternative. Maybe you don't want to buy someone a bottle of scotch because I guess maybe some people maybe don't feel comfortable purchasing alcohol for people or whatnot. Get them a decanter. It's a great option that offers your recipient a great way to present their whiskey, and there are no shortage of great looking decanters out there. And I know a lot of, I guess, scotch drinkers might think, we don't really want to decant our whiskey. That's going to expose it to oxygen at a much faster rate than it would be in a bottle. Well, hey, it's going to get you through that bottle a lot quicker. So why not?
Why not? Exactly. Like whiskey's there to be drunk.
And we believe that at Dram Talk. It's there to be drunk and it's there to be shared.
We do, yes. And now, as we're going into the Christmas season, I imagine we may be purchasing either some gifts for ourselves, or if we get given any gifts related to whiskey, I'm sure we'd be sharing them through our Instagram and our Facebook. So you can find them through our link tree in the description of this podcast. Otherwise, you can reach out to us at dramtalk.au@gmail.com. We'd love to know what bottles you're currently drinking or what bottles you've received over Christmas, or if you decide to take our advice and purchase something for someone, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
So I think that about wraps it up, ladies and gentlemen. So
thank you for listening.
And as always,
pour another dram!